Hello, and welcome to the Capitola Planning Commission meeting for Monday, March 3rd, 2025. This meeting is open to the public with both in-person attendance at the City Council chambers at 420 Capitola Avenue, and remote viewing is also possible. The Planning Commission and staff are attending in person, and members of the public wanting to offer public comment need to be present. The public can live stream the meeting on the city's website, on YouTube, or on Zoom following the link on the meeting agenda. As always, this meeting is cablecast live on Spectrum Communications Cable TV Channel 8 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99, and is being re-recorded to be rebroadcast on the following Mondays and Fridays at 1 p.m. on Spectrum Channel 71 and Spectrum Channel 25. A recording of the meeting will also be available on the city's website after the meeting. Our technician tonight is Paloma Bobadilla. As a reminder, those of you in the room, please turn off your cell phones so we don't have any interference during the meeting. Thank you. Now, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Q.
Here.
Commissioner Westman.
Here.
Vice Chair Christensen. Here. Chair Esty.
Here. Thank you. You all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 2 on our agenda, additions and deletions to the agenda. There is additional material. Is there anything else that's needed?
Staff received additional materials for item 6A that were included in the agenda packet, as well as one email that came in at 5:37 and was printed and distributed to staff and commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 on our agenda, oral communications. Please review the section How to Provide Comments to the Planning Commission for instructions. Oral communications allow time for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on any consent item on tonight's agenda or any topic within the jurisdiction of the city that is not on the public hearing section of the agenda. Members of the public may speak for up to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified by the chair. Individuals may not speak more than once during oral communications. All speakers must address the entire legislative body and will not be permitted to engage in any dialogue. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment at this point? Please step forward to the podium, and if you could please sign in, we would appreciate it.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is David Fox. I've lived in town since 1977. I really enjoy town. And I am also a retired builder and small developer. And I understand the pressure the city is under by state law to do rezoning. And I agree that there's some things you guys are really under. But I'm really wondering if anybody on this commission has thought that when you're rezoning these properties, to make a special zoning for them, which I believe might still meet the state regulations. I don't know. You'd have to look into it. But rezone these properties to say, we're going to let you have this density, but you're going to put 40% low income on them. I don't think there's a rule against that. You're still meeting the density regulations, but the state's saying you got to build these houses because there's no low-income housing. And just think about it. I just wanted to throw that out as a thought to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody else from the public who would like to speak at this point?
Chair Esty, I'd like to, just pardon my interruption, but tonight, any comments related to multifamily zoning, that will coming up later as item 6A. So at this time, we're hearing comments related to the consent calendar, which there's a request for continuance of an application for a fence permit, and any comments not related to an item on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, with that, any other comments from the public? Hearing none, let's move on to item number 4, starting with Planning Commission comments. Any comments from the commissioners? I actually do have one, and this is a little, not quite within the purview of community, development, but there is a lot of concern growing on Depot Hill about the erosion, relatively rapid erosion of the bluff, and which appears to be driven by the saturation of the topsoil above the sandstone formation. I've sent some emails in to Jessica, but I would just like to reinforce that could be a very dangerous situation, especially on the path between Saxon and Oakland, which has been somewhat undercut by the last slough off that we had. But I'm also more worried actually about the other path going the other direction from Saxon to Central. I think somebody really needs to go look at that just to make sure we don't have a problem. The probability of anything happening is very low, but the consequences could be dramatically high, and we wouldn't want to have an accident that we could have prevented. So anyway, that's my comment to basically the city. Thank you.
I'll relay that back to Director Khan.
Thank you. Okay, staff, any other comments for tonight?
No additional comments tonight. I do know that actually one comment, the RTC is hosting a town hall meeting tomorrow night related to the rail trail project segments 10 and 11 through the city of Capitola. It's March 4th from 6 to 7:30 at New Brighton Middle School at 250 Washburn Avenue. So just putting that out there.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered by the Planning Commission to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time the Planning Commission votes on the action unless the Planning Commission requests specific items to be discussed for separate review. Items thus pulled for separate discussion will be considered in the order listed on the agenda. Is there anyone on the commission that would like further discussion on item A in the consent calendar?
I have a couple of questions about item A. I don't know if we can just get those answered or.
Microphone.
I have a couple of questions about item A, but I'm not certain we need to actually pull it, only because there's been a lot of talk in town. Everyone knows about, rail and trail and all of that. And several of my neighbors ask me where this particular fencing that the RTC is applying for to go along the bluff is actually going to go.
Yes, so
Is it going to be on their property?
yes. So there's 1,300 linear feet of fencing proposed, and my understanding is that it's to help for safety matters along the bluff. And it'll be along the bluff. It's not going to be closer to the street or right along the rail. It'll want meander based on where the paths are today along that bluff. So we'll be bringing that back to Planning Commission at another date, a date uncertain at this point.
But it's not going to hinder people from walking along the rail corridor the way they currently do.
So they have some concern about bluff stabilization in certain areas in which not all of the paths would be accessible with the fence. It is a split rail fence though, so if anyone were to go beyond the fence, it's at their own risk. But
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So with that, I'll make a motion to approve our consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a vote, please.
Commissioner Keel,
Aye.
Commissioner Westman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Christensen,
Aye.
Chair Esty.
Aye. All Right. Item number 6 on our agenda are public hearings. Public hearings are intended to provide an opportunity for public discussion of each item listed as a public hearing. Procedure is as follows: staff presentation, planning commission questions, then public comment, then back to the planning commission for deliberation, and the last thing is for the commission to make a decision. The first item on our public hearing agenda is the multifamily residential zoning effort that we're under as part of the housing element for the state of California, and we have a staff and consultant presentation. Actually, Ben, before you start, do you want us to ask questions as you go along or save them for the end?
If you could save them, I think that would be best.
Will do. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Ben Noble. I'm the city's consultant assisting with the zoning code amendments to implement the housing element. So the topic tonight is the RM zone amendments, and this is a Planning Commission work session. And we're approaching it as an informational item where we will provide you with an update on the work that we've completed on this topic so far, provide the Planning Commission an opportunity to ask questions, provide us with comments, receive public comment with the expectation that we will return to the Planning Commission for a continued discussion and direction on this item at a future meeting. So, as the Planning Commission knows, this is a subject that you have been discussing for some time, and it's about the RM zones. So on the screen right now is a map of the zoning code, or the zoning map as established in the zoning code. And within Capitola, there is the residential multifamily zone that's divided into 3 subzones. So it's the brown areas that's shown on the map. The 3 subzones are RML, RMM, and RMH, so the brown colors. And these zones allow for multifamily development at different densities. Currently, the RML subzone allows 10 dwelling units per acre, 15 dwelling units per acre in the RMM, and 20 dwelling units per acre in the RMH. So it's the brown areas on the zoning map that we're focused on and looking at tonight. Within the zoning code, there are development standards that apply to the RM subzones shown on the screen, addressing issues such as height, building coverage, and setback. So one of the topics of discussion related to this item is the development standards that apply within these areas. And the reason we're here tonight concerns Housing Element Program 1.6. So last year, the city adopted the housing element, which establishes basic city policy for housing within Capitola as required by state law. And state law for housing elements are somewhat unique in that they're very prescriptive, and the city must have its housing element certified by the State Department of Community and Housing Development. And the city needs to maintain in compliance with HCD certification as well as part of its implementation of the housing element. Cities that fall out of compliance with their housing element are vulnerable to a number of different penalties, which may include losing grant funding from the state or even local control over land use approvals and building permits. So remaining in compliance with the housing element and with state law is something that is important and that the city takes very seriously. So within the housing element, there's one particular program that we're focused on tonight that's up on the screen. And I'll read it because it's important. And what it says is that the city will review and revise as appropriate requirements such as the minimum unit size, setbacks, parking requirements, and height restrictions to ensure they are necessary and pertinent and do not pose constraints on the development of housing. This includes assessing the maximum densities allowed in the RML and RMM zones to determine if higher densities can help facilitate multi-development in the city. So in summary, what this program says, the city needs to look at its RM standards, including the maximum allowed density, and consider whether or not these standards pose a constraint on multifamily development. And if they do, and if it's appropriate, the city needs to make adjustments to those standards in order to remove and reduce those constraints. Last year, the Planning Commission held 9 meetings to talk about zoning code amendments to implement the housing element. 3 of those meetings involved discussion of the RM amendments. So there was a meeting in May, June, and then in August at which the Planning Commission considered Program 1.6 and how it might be implemented with amendments to the zoning code. Last year, the Planning Commission also discussed a variety of other zoning code amendments, including changes to parking requirements for multifamily development. And this was an amendment to the zoning code that was made specifically to address Program 1.6. And as shown on the screen, changes were made to the parking standards for multifamily that created a sliding scale of required on-site parking spaces based on the size of the unit. And this was a change that was made specifically to address the requirements of Program 1.6. So here's a map that's looking again at the zoning map. And the Planning Commission may recall that last year at the meetings we had on this subject, we were looking at the different RM areas in the city, and we divided it into a number of different quadrants to look at an area-specific consideration of whether or not allowed density should be changed. And the proposal that was considered in 2024 by the Planning Commission was to establish 5 RM subzones, the first 3 of which were similar to the existing RM, LM, and H subzones, allowing for 10, 15, and 20 dwelling units per acre. And then 2 new subzones were proposed that would allow up to 30 dwelling units per acre and 40 dwelling units per acre. The Planning Commission also considered changes to the development standards for these different subzones to allow up to 40 dwelling units per acre with height, setback, and building coverage standards, which could accommodate the maximum allowed densities in each of those areas. So the Planning Commission went through an exercise of looking at potential changes to allowed densities in all RM areas, considering criteria that we had established at that time for those areas. And at a notice public meeting, the Planning Commission received public comments expressing concerns with the proposed RM amendments. The Planning Commission received those comments and directed staff to further review the RM area selection criteria, to conduct additional public outreach, and to return to the Planning Commission for further discussion in 2025. So based on that direction from the Planning Commission and public comments received, staff took a new look at the RM area selection criteria and decided that the city should focus on a question of on which RM properties would greater allowed density facilitate multifamily development. And the reason for this related to the language in Program 1.6, which focused on the city taking actions to remove constraints that hindered the development of multifamily development. And so we wanted to focus on the areas where those governmental constraints actually would interfere with the production of additional multifamily development. So in light of that, we looked at criteria including ownership patterns, financial feasibility, physical suitability, neighborhood compatibility, and natural resource and hazard constraints. So I'll quickly go through some of these. So for example, ownership pattern. We were looking at sites or areas under single ownership, and in particular, where there was no existing condominiums. The second criteria was financial feasibility. So looking at the age and condition of buildings, as well as the duration of investment. Physical suitability, so really looking at large parcels and the availability of land for new buildings on those parcels. Neighborhood compatibility, including access from primary roadways and adjacent land uses. And then lastly, natural resource and hazard constraints, which was a criteria we were originally looking at, where we excluded areas and sites along the coastal bluff or with environmental sensitive habitat, which would prevent additional multifamily development. And one last criteria is non-conforming density. So when this was before the Planning Commission previously, we included areas for increased density where the built density exceeded the allowed density as a way to legalize that existing density and remove the non-conforming status. After further consideration of that issue, staff moved in the direction of addressing that particular concern, not through a change in the allowed density, but rather in adding language to the zoning code that would explicitly allow for the redevelopment of those properties at the built density in a way that would sort of remove that non-conforming status as a barrier to potential redevelopment of those sites.
So if I may, for one moment, I just want to emphasize that the decrease in overall numbers in this new criteria is really based on realistic redevelopment. So by removing existing condominiums from the list, typically within a condo, you'd have to have a majority or 100% vote in favor of redeveloping a condo. So it really didn't make sense to keep condos within this criteria if we didn't think they would realistically see redevelopment in the future. And the same with the non-conforming. So we're just trying to, in that effort of the new criteria that you're seeing, it's really, it's utilizing many of the criteria that we used for our housing element site selection as well, and making sure that there's suitability to redevelop on the site. So with that, I'll let Ben continue.
Okay. All right, so using that criteria, staff developed a map of RM housing opportunity areas that's shown on the screen here with 7 areas. And you can see these areas are all larger areas under single ownership without condominiums that in staff's assessment could realistically accommodate additional multifamily development where increasing the allowed density would have a meaningful and real impact on the development potential of those areas. And in addition to the map of the 7 RM areas, staff also prepared potential new development standards that would allow for development of up to 30 dwelling units per acre as summarized in this table. And this was material that was shared at the public workshop that was held last week. I should also note that the Planning Commission previously considered development standards in 2024 that would be necessary to accommodate densities of up to 40 dwelling units per acre, as shown on the screen here. Okay, so staff created the map that shows the 7 RM areas based on the criteria identifying areas zoned RM with realistic multifamily development potential. And then the development standards that would accommodate densities of up to 30 dwelling units per acre, and then hosted a community workshop to provide additional background information behind the RM zone amendments, and then to also provide residents with an opportunity to provide input on the new material. And the requested input at this workshop focused on whether or not these areas are suitable for additional multifamily development. We also asked participants to provide feedback on what they like or didn't like about some multifamily development examples recently constructed in Santa Cruz County, including in Capitola. In the Planning Commission packet, there is a summary of the workshop, including photographs of the posters on which residents provided comments and a transcription of those comments. And on the question of the suitability of the RM areas, there is, as you would expect, a diversity of opinions on this subject that varied from area to area, but there were some overarching themes. We heard concerns about the impacts of new development on surrounding uses, a lot of concerns about parking, including the loss of on-street parking that's currently available within neighborhoods, concerns about whether or not these areas were suitable for redevelopment given proximity or distance from services and amenities. We heard some concerns about these areas and if they were redeveloped, what that would mean in terms of the loss of common open space available to residents. Let's see. We also heard some comments about wanting to really focus on realistic redevelopment opportunities, the desirability of upgrading older development within Capitola, the value of eliminating existing non-conforming density situations. And we also heard some comments about the potential loss of existing affordable units if some of these sites were to be redeveloped with new housing. So those were some of the general themes in the comments that we heard on the areas. And it was interesting also to hear public comments about multifamily design issues that were important to them. When looking at photographs and commenting on photographs of recent multifamily development, we received comments about the value of street-facing porches, usable open space, the importance of appropriate heights for new development, massing concerns about larger buildings and breaking those larger buildings up into smaller volumes, where the greatest massing of a development project could occur on a site, including locating that more in the interior of the site. And then a lot of comments about noting things that participants liked or didn't like about building materials and color, roof design, landscaping, building separation, architectural style, and facade articulation. And one thing that was interesting for me when listening to these comments is that pretty much all of these issues are already addressed in the city's objective standards for multifamily development, which made me feel good that we have existing standards in place that address the issues that are important to residents. So that's sort of a summary of the work that has occurred up to tonight. And as I mentioned previously, staff is here tonight primarily to provide the Planning Commission with a status update on the work that's been completed and to receive additional public comment and Planning Commission comments. So in advance of the meeting tonight, including on Friday as well as today, staff received a number of public comments on the agenda materials, including comments from residents, one letter from Santa Cruz YIMBY, and one letter from YIMBY Law. And so as these comments were received just today or on Friday, staff hasn't had much opportunity to address all of the issues that were raised in the letters. And one of the things that we recommend tonight is that that we return to the Planning Commission after having had an opportunity to consider some of those comments in greater detail. So in summary, I think tonight what we are recommending from the Planning Commission is to receive an update on the RM zone amendment work, which we've provided, and then to provide staff with initial comments on this work that's been completed tonight that you may have that will be relevant as we continue work, and then for the Planning Commission to anticipate a future meeting in the near future for additional information and an opportunity to provide more specific feedback and direction. And so in terms of next steps, as I mentioned, staff wants to take a little time for more review of the public comments received and to continue discussions with groups that have provided comments, including housing advocates. I think that there is maybe sort of some things that could be better clarified or better explained by staff, and that may enable us to sort of overcome a number of issues where there could be some disagreements. And then based on that continued review and discussions, I think staff would move forward with perhaps modifying the proposed approach if needed, also considering any Planning Commission feedback tonight. And then we would schedule another Planning Commission work session with maybe a more specific proposal for the Planning Commission to consider at a public meeting. And then based on that, we would prepare the actual draft zoning code amendments with any needed changes to the zoning map and the zoning code, the establishment of new RM subzones, if that's the direction that we continue to head, for consideration by the Planning Commission at a noticed public hearing. And at that hearing, the Planning Commission would be asked to make a recommendation on the zoning code amendment, which would then be passed forward to the City Council. And the City Council is the body that would ultimately approve any changes to the zoning code related to the RM zone. So with that, that concludes staff presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Let's turn it over here to the commissioners. Any questions for the staff on this presentation?
I just want to make certain I understand things correctly. So we adopted our housing element, and in our housing element, we're supposed to come up with adequate sites for 1,300 something units. And we have done that in our housing element now.
That is correct.
So this is going to be above and beyond if we add more units, what we're required to do in the current housing element.
That is correct.
Okay. And a lot of our housing in the housing element has been designated, for example, the Capitola Mall. And so it's my understanding that we're not talking about how many units can the zoning for the mall site, because it's not zoned RM, it's zoned commercial. And so, and we're not talking about the rest of 41st Avenue, which can have higher density residential on it as well.
That's correct. This is specific just to multifamily zones, which they are not located along 41st Avenue.
Okay. And it is my understanding, and I want to make certain I'm correct, that for affordable units that go away if someone comes in and redevelops a piece of property, there are already state laws that are going to assure that those affordable units aren't lost. I think it's something like people who've lived there the last 5 years fall into that category based on their income. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make certain I understood all of that before we start talking. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. So, given that staff recommendations of the proposed initial 40 density units per acre last year, can staff clarify how scaling back to 30 density units per acre satisfied HCD's concerns about housing constraints? I'm really concerned about if the state determines 30 density units per acre is too restricted. I'm worried that we may lose local control on that. Can we talk a little bit about that?
So at this point, this is a work session, and we do have included in the slides the 40. And so that's still on the table. We're not saying that we definitely should not include 40, but just at this point, that's definitely still on the table. So we don't really have a firm recommendation on exactly what density is appropriate. And I think that's where we'll get there between hopefully this meeting and the next. But just considering that additional density would be beneficial in order to create more opportunities for housing.
One further background on that. One of the reasons why we previously identified the 40 dwelling units per acre as the maximum allowed density is because that's a density that can be accommodated with a 3-story building. And to go above 40 dwelling units per acre, that would then require sort of a different product type that would maybe need a height greater than 3 stories. And we thought in the RM areas that keeping the building height to 3 stories was important. So that's a little background on that.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but my recollection was at the last time we were talking about a number of properties that are built at higher densities, such as the Park Avenue condos that are currently built at 40 units. And we were concerned about making certain there was a way so they're not considered non-conforming and would be restricted in being redeveloped. But you've taken care of that issue if we adopt a zoning change that will say that places that are already built at 40 units could go back at 40 units.
Right. Yeah, that's another reason why we had previously identified that 40 dwelling units per acre.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I have quite a few questions, actually. So the first and probably most important is I understand that we're supposed to take action as a planning commission on the zoning thing to facilitate the achievement of the 1336 dwelling units as part of this 6-year housing element plan. So what we're doing here, what we're trying to do with this thing is to encourage developers to come in and actually do stuff in city of Capitola, right?
I think we've already designated property that can accommodate that number of units.
No, I don't.
So within our housing element, we adopted our sites inventory, and we have shown that we can accommodate the 1,336 units. And actually, we've exceeded that number because when you have affordable housing units, it's at 15%. So we've identified over 2,000 units that could be developed in Capitola. And the majority of those are along our mixed-use sites because we have a lot of commercial development that could go higher. So we do have, we've met our, we're in compliance with our housing element in terms of the 1,336 units and where they can be achieved in Capitola. So this exercise on multifamily is in addition to that. So this exercise is not about identifying how many more units we can create, but just it's to look at the requirements and ensure that they are necessary and pertinent and do not pose constraints on development. That's really so we're reviewing the multifamily zoning and removing hurdles that may be in place that would not be.
Okay, so your interpretation would be that we have the authority to selectively look at certain properties and say, we make this decision whether a developer would consider it feasible or not. It's not we should be uniform across the entire zone and say we should apply the rules to everybody. I mean, do we have that liberty? It's not, the MB law letter implies we don't have that liberty.
So I believe we have that liberty, but we are going to be checking in on that during this time in between. But what we've done is we've taken the two steps. One is to review the development standards within the code. And then the second is to review the densities within the low and medium multifamily. And in doing that, we came to the conclusion that we should create an additional zone rather than modify everything about the low and medium, because they work. The setbacks, the height, they work for those appropriate densities that are attached to them. But in order to create an avenue for additional housing, our approach is let's not modify low and medium, the heights and the densities. Let's create a new zone on those properties that really could accommodate more housing. So it's creating possibly the multifamily 30 and or the multifamily 40 to create an avenue for that. So I think we have checked the boxes in looking at the development standards, and they're appropriate for the densities under each, but also in order to really find an area in which to facilitate multifamily development, my take is that we really need to create a new zone. And so we'll have our city attorney looking at that between this meeting and the next, but I do think that we're on the right track.
Yeah, I guess, Mike, I always look at this from a sort of practical standpoint. When the price of a lot is approximately $8 to $10 million per acre, any developer that's looking at least market pricing is going to want as many units as they can. So this concept of what is feasible differs depending on your point of view, right? If I'm a developer and I'm trying to at least break even, I'm going to want as much as I can. And it's the way we're doing this is I'm not sure that we're looking at all of the different, and the public doesn't want 100 dwelling units per acre. Nobody wants that. We don't want skyscrapers in Capitola. So we're trying to figure out, as Mr. Fox put it, when the state comes down to put pressure on us, what are we doing we should be doing? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because we've just picked and choosed out of a list of 37 properties, we whittle it down to 7, which we think requires rezoning or zoning amendments. And that seems subjective to me as opposed to a more objective. You do it for RML, RMH, and RMM. You see what I'm saying?
I do see.
We're sort of changing the game a little bit, the rules of the game as we go.
But I do think it's important, but we'll talk. I'll save my comments till later because that's what we should do. We should just be asking questions now. So.
Okay, and then, I guess the same thing applies to condominiums. We made a subjective assessment that condos are too hard to remodel, so we're not going to deal with them. And again, I don't know if we would be criticized for making that decision or not by the state.
So I think I'll take that in the form of a question of whether or not the condos criteria is subjective, and I think it is objective because a housing product such as a condominium would take a vote of the property owners. Sure. So when you have a lot of property owners, the likelihood of 50% or greater voting to redevelop that site, we don't think the likelihood, it's very likely. Possibly on smaller condo sites, if the Planning Commission wanted us to look into smaller condo sites in which you have maybe 4 under a certain amount of units. But when you think about the very large condos along Park Avenue, to get a 50% approval, or on Kennedy as well, the Knolls, like to get a 50% approval by those owners or whatever it says in their HOA agreement, we think that's nearly impossible. So that's why we took those sites.
I agree. I'm sure their HOA is probably a majority or simple majority, maybe more than that. But it's still, we're making a decision, and the state may say, well, you don't have the right to make that decision. You need to plow forward with whatever you can do to accommodate new development. I'm only approaching this from if we get decertified, the the negative side of that can be pretty bad on the city from a lot of different directions.
So I think part of that question there is why? Why did we go about it this way? And during 2024, when we had the 3 meetings, and there was definitely a level of stress in our for our residents about the increased density, the reason why, and we added that criteria is because if we think there's not a likelihood of that ever occurring, it doesn't seem practical to put that stress on our residents. So that's kind of why we landed where we are. We're not finished by any means, so it'll be great to hear public comment this evening on this. And we continue to learn throughout this process, and we hope to get it right by the time we get to a drafted ordinance. But that's how we got here and the why. So thank you.
I'd like to dovetail that with one of my questions is that so HCD is asking us for all cities in the state to have a good faith effort to be able to meet these kind of housing requirements on there. And with the good work that the staff has done already, we have a proposed slate of different options. But what happens if they come back and say, that's not good enough, right? And with the local builders remedies that we've seen within their county, the Live Oak development down there, Huntington Beach got their hands slapped. What have we done, or what can we do? Or is that a real threat to us? And if so, how do we prepare for that, if that's the case?
Yeah, I think the standards we have in place are objective standards, and they were applied, the majority of these standards were applied within our housing element, which was adopted and certified. So the couple criteria about condos, that wasn't something we looked at, but in the housing element, we were identifying sites. But I think they're reasonable criteria that the state will be open to. So we'll be checking in with them. We'll make sure that we're on the right path so that we're not in the place that some of these other jurisdictions have landed.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so let's open this to public comment. I see a lot of people in the room, so I would ask you to line up behind the lectern there. You sign in when you get up there to speak. I don't want to stress anybody, but you only have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll keep to the 3-minute rule. So let's just line up and hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Keith Galen. I just have 2 comments this evening. The first one is always take back and take a system approach to looking at things. And one of the things that I would criticize is the fact that on the RM zone density, the fact that traffic and availability and access for public transportation to get to your housing is bundled under neighborhood compatibility. I think that's misleading and at worst irresponsible. And whether it's the previous planning commission or senior staff that's not here, I think that should be broken out and made a separate item to be considered by the planning commission. The second one is with regard to the 600 Park Avenue. I think that you should totally remove that from consideration at this point in time. The primary reason for that is, number one, Cap Ave Bridge is not done. Number two, you don't have the Bay Avenue access to Highway 1 open. And number three, you've got all the RTC action that's going on right now that you have no idea what's going to be going on along Park Avenue, okay? And fourth is, since I just drove down Park Avenue, it's backed up all the way down Monterey, okay? So I would strongly recommend that you remove 600 Park Avenue until all of those exterior criteria are resolved, and then you can make a solid judgment on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Excuse me, you could just be sure you sign in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All signed in. So I grew up in town. I had a T-shirt that used to say "Save SoCal" on it. I don't know if any of you were involved in that effort, but at the time I thought a lot about traffic and just how I like biking through empty lots, and it all made sense to me. But something has changed. I now have kids, and I really look forward to the day when they can live in town. So I'm so concerned about these costs, and I really support density and more housing, the 40 density units. All these things sound good to me now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I stand corrected. You do not have to sign in. That'll actually speed things up.
I need to sign in or not sign in?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Anyways, I just want to point out a few things. 600 Park, it's totally out of character with the area. And there's single-story homes all around there, surrounded by a school also. 3 stories is just too much, in my opinion. Also, when I went to the meeting here today, I just found out about the meeting at 6:10 from another neighbor. I ran down here. The traffic was all the way back to Monterey, up to Kennedy, and adding 200 cars more to that mess is going to be a real disaster. And I don't like it. And I don't think a lot of people don't like it. And I don't think the Bay extension is going to make that much difference. And finally, I have property in other locations. I don't get postcards. I get letters. Can you send letters instead of postcards describing what's going to happen and when the meeting's going to be? Small counties like Calavera sends me letters. County of Santa Cruz sends me a letter if there's any action can happen in my other properties. And I would appreciate no more postcards. I mean, I'll promise I'll recycle them. Yeah. And, really this is my mother's property, who's 94, and she doesn't really pay attention to the postcards that much. And I would appreciate that you could take an extra effort to spend $1 to send notices out to the people who live adjacent to these properties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I would actually like to piggyback on what you just said about the letters. I did attend the outreach meeting the other night on the 25th. I believe it was poorly attended. 19 people is not representative of of either the residents at these 7 sites or their neighbors. We did not get postcards, so it would have been nice to get a postcard. We actually got them. I inquire about it, and I was told that it was considered, but not done. I was also told that it would be expensive, hundreds of dollars. I don't buy that. It's not that expensive to send out postcards. This meeting is also not as attended as normal for these serious items to be on. I believe due diligence was not done. Not that you didn't mean to do it, but I don't think it was. I believe another outreach, another community meeting is in order. I believe that you need to speak to why we went from 30 down to 37 sites and what is entailed. Last time I was at this meeting, I was under the impression that we did not have all the units that we needed to reach our housing element. However, tonight it's been brought to our attention that we actually do meet that. So everything we're doing is over and above. So I'm not really understanding it. So I have a lot of questions that I think a community meeting would answer. I think everyone is really hot on the RTC right now, and I think it's competing with our housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Maddie Hessler. I'm a resident at Turner Lane, adjacent to the Capitola and Hill properties that you're considering for high density development, multifamily. And I just had a couple of comments. I think you guys looked at the quality of the residential quality of the area, considering that high density, a lot of proportions of rentals. We are not rentals. We are 80 individual homeowners. We own our lots. So we're very concerned about the quality of life that might change if we have a 3-story building adjacent to our fences. Our homes are very close to the property lines. So we're very concerned about that quality. we feel that 30, going from 15 to 30 is too much, where I'm kind of a MIMBY, maybe in my backyard, maybe with a little bit less density, with some adjustments. I personally could be supportive. I think that all of our residents feel that 30 is too much, at least the ones who came to the meeting last week. I feel that property, because there's existing homes on there with probably quite a number of people who are renting there, the actual availability of, without raising the properties and, evicting residents, the actual availability of the property for development, the spaces within that property for development are pretty limited. So I don't know how practical it is to really zone that as high density. And I think he did summarize all our concerns about parking, height, and setback. We all have concerns about that. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz. Thanks for taking comments tonight. I'm a resident here in Capitola, and I'm sorry, I'm just now learning about this whole rezoning amendment, so I wish I had been there to contribute at some of the other earlier meetings, but I'm here now, so I want to share my input. I think Capitola needs more housing. I think we should go beyond the bare minimum that the state is looking for. I'm absolutely a YIMBY. I think we should go with a maximum density proposal of 40 units per acre. I also think, I don't know, I'm not a developer. I don't know about how all that works, but it feels like we should have more options for developers to make it more exciting for them to develop here in Capitola. So I know traffic is, no one likes traffic, but Park Avenue is a more probably enticing location for a developer to develop on. So I think that would be another good location. And I would like us to just not limit the options for developers to whatever the 7 sites that were selected are. I know there's a lot of thought that goes into that, but if it's possible to make it easier, I am all in favor of more housing. I have kids, and I also want my kids to be able to afford to buy a house here one day. Right now, it seems pretty crazy. And as a state, we need housing. We need more low-income housing, and I just think we should go for whatever we can to really try to reach those goals and go beyond those goals and make our community a more welcoming place. So thank you for taking my comments.
Thank you.
My name is Robin Peak. I live at 920 Capitola Avenue. Maddie is one of my neighbors, the lady who just got up here and talked about the density of the housing behind the park. I think that, we have the freeway on one side of us, and then if it goes forward that you folks decide that the unit should be 40 per acre, and they go up 3 stories, I think the people who live in that park are going to feel sandwiched in. It isn't really clear to me why you would want to go beyond what you're required to do by the state, given the distribution that this city received from the state in general, the proportion of units that you have to install. I attended the meeting last week, and I really appreciated it. I'm not sure about the turnout. I don't really know about that, but I can tell you that for myself, I found it very informative. I found it very disarming, and I found it very easy to have an interactive conversation with both the city planner and the consultant that were there. So I appreciate the effort that went into that. Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tessa Tutman. I live in Cliffwood Heights, right by Monterey Park. I learned a lot tonight at this meeting. I'm really happy to hear that you guys have found a plan for the required amount of housing that we have to comply with. That's great. My main concern, especially because it's in my backyard and I drive by it and walk by it every day, The 600 Park Avenue site, I like how you're looking at neighborhood compatibility. I like how you're looking at the effect on access to main thoroughfares. Obviously, people have mentioned the traffic on Park Avenue, and traffic is so bad right now. I understand we have to meet these standards, but if we've already met that criteria, I think we need to be really careful about the sites that we select to increase the housing. I don't know how to say this in the most politically correct way, but about a month ago, there was a sex offender that had been found on felony charges hiding under a different alias in Capitola Knolls, right in our backyard. It had been going on for, I think he lived there for a couple of years. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're trying to build a 3-story home or, multi-home residential building. And there's a school right there. There's a middle school right there with children that are out there playing. And I just think we need to be really careful and really selective about neighborhood compatibility, safety of our kids, traffic, and the general surrounding area, because it is mainly single family homes, and just to be really careful about our selection. And if we make a broad, or you make a broad decision that kind of allows a developer in there to just kind of do whatever, it would be really impactful for the city to be able to protect just the rights of the community. I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry, I get really nervous. Just to be able to make the right decisions and regarding the development in certain areas. So just not like one blanket rule that would go for all of these different areas, but maybe be very selective for the sites choose to apply these rules.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask the speakers to speak into the microphone, please? Because this session's being recorded. I don't know if we got that recording. Thanks. No worries.
Hi, my name is Suzanne, and I just want to express my support for what you're doing, getting more housing density and going above and beyond what the state is asking. I live in Capitola, and I've worked as a public health nurse in Santa Cruz with the unhoused for over 10 years, and so I very much support housing. And also, I hope we can be creative about it. I don't know if there are any conversations happening, but I know in my neighborhood, there are a lot of people that don't live there full time. There's a lot of second and probably third homeowners. And so I'm just seeing that the housing available to those who live here and work here seems to be decreasing. So I hope that is part of the conversation at some point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, commissioners. Welcome to the new members. My name is Janine Roth, and I'm a lead with Santa Cruz YIMBY, and I want to speak to some of the points in the letter that we sent you. As you know, we advocate for more housing throughout Santa Cruz County, and we have been working with the city of Capitola and with you as you developed your housing element, as you went through and certified it, and also with prior zoning code amendments. This is a really important issue for us. It's also critical for Capitola because 80% of your current housing stock is over 30 years old. You haven't really built a lot in the last decade or so. So now is the time to be building, and Capitola needs more homes, and multifamily homes are really a critical way to do that and are viable in several areas. So what I want to do right now is just really to focus in and ask you to reject any proposal that maxes out at 30. You really should direct staff to come back with a proposal from last August that includes 30 and 40 units per acre. As noted, the proposal doesn't really meet your commitment in the housing element. I know that the number of sites is there, but Program 1.6 is a constraint reduction program, how to make it more feasible to build. And I just want to, I'm not with YIMBY law, but I do want to indicate that not only the reduction of sites is a consideration, but also the affirmatively furthering fair housing is a consideration, as none of the zones that you listed were single-family zones, homes. So because it's a constraint reduction program, it seems you had an assessment last year that found that densities above 30 units per acre could facilitate housing. So let's not backtrack on that now. Density, there's a theoretical fear to density, but it's apartments that you already have. You have apartments that are already 30 plus density units per acre. You highlighted them in the housing element. On Monday, there were examples, design examples that were 30, 40, and up to 50 units per acre. And as was noted, thank you, Commissioner Westman, the redevelopment is becoming more financially challenging, but also beneficial for the low-income tenants. Majority of Capitola residents, 54%, are considered low income. And it is true that state law does protect those tenants if there was redevelopment. That's a good thing, but it makes it more financially challenging, and it's more of a reason to have the base density be there to help for redevelopment. So you made progress last year. Let's not backtrack now. Please direct staff to come back with a new proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cheryl Ban. I'm a local resident for over 40 years. I really appreciate the meetings. I appreciate the feedback. The commissioners, I went to the meeting recently with Sean and Ben, and they were very accessible and appreciated that. It was not attended because people don't know about it. I think we do need to come up with a better way of outreach so the community knows what's going on. You know, this housing element is not an organic need of our city. This is something that has been imposed upon the state. If we had felt that in our city, that we needed housing, it would have come at a different direction. The pressure that is being put on our city is unrealistic. We are 1.6 miles, less than 10,000 people here, and housing is important. I agree, it is so important, but I'm just really suspicious at this point of what we're being put through to achieve this in this city, not just our county, but Capitola specifically. We are dense, but my biggest concern, and I haven't heard addressed, is how do we evacuate in a time of need, an emergency that would spark us. We had the Moss Landing lithium fire. We could have been ignited. And where would we have gone? Park Avenue, traffic, more traffic, more traffic. How do we get out if we need to with more and more and more density? I just have concerns. The state is pressuring us. Please, city people, protect us from the state being unreasonable. Do what you can. I know you're under pressure. I get it. And thank you for doing all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Kevin McGuire, and not to outdo her, but I've lived here for over 50 years now, so probably a lot of people here maybe around that time. Like the other lady said, I'm a self-described MIMBY, maybe in my backyard, mindful in my backyard. Not no, not yes, but we need to be mindful. The 600 Park Avenue, that's right next to the butterfly habitat, so that seems like that's a sensitive environmental zone that I didn't see that it was really addressed there. Also, some of the HUD assisted housing and projects, they really, if they have an adverse effect on the health and safety of the town, the community, the residents, that's a way to stop those projects, these high density projects from happening in our area. That's going to negatively impact the community, the people, our safety. I ride my bike with my dog on Park Avenue 2 times a day, almost every single day. It's a busy road, and the concern with 600 Park Avenue, not a lot of parking, and if RTC tries to take away all the on-street parking on Park Avenue, where's all those cars going to go if there's not enough parking there?
and the road is busy enough trying to get in and out of that. So that's something really to consider there. So they say medium to high density is about 1,200 to 4,900 people per square mile. High density is over 4,900 people per square mile. You guys know what the density in Capitola is per square mile? It's about 6,234 people per square mile. We're already dense. We already came up with the 1,336 to satisfy that. Really, we need to be mindful of what's going to happen to the people that lived here, people who've been here forever, and people that love and sacrifice to make Capitola their home. So if we already satisfied that, and we're going to be in compliance, we really need to be mindful to the residents. And as you can see, a lot of people came out here to show what we really care about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public would like to make a comment? Please step up. Thank you.
Hi, Mike Margulies. I'm at 125 Wesley. My wife, Mary. I want to reinforce the opinions of the other actual longtime residents that there is a lot of stress about the density increase and going above and beyond. I mean, the requirement from the state is already going to have a significantly negative effect on our neighborhoods. Going above and beyond is completely not required. So I understand that we need housing. What we really need to do is talk about building new neighborhoods, new communities, not keep crowbarring into existing communities. I mean, what's the next element? Then we're going to crowbar another 1,300 houses into Capitola? It has to stop somewhere, right? We need to build new communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm allowed to speak again or not. It's different. After listening to you, I really question how the city can say, we are going to change the zoning on these 7 parcels, because that's like giving a gift to those owners of those parcels. And I don't know that that's legal, that you can give a gift to certain parcels and not give them to all those parcels that are zoned the same without the possibility of having lawsuits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments before we close that part of the meeting? Going once, twice, okay, thank you. Now we'll bring it back to the commission to deliberate. Anybody want to go first?
I'll go ahead and kick it off right there. I want to say thank you for everyone's comments and hearing both sides of this conversation and debate. I really appreciate the fact that our community is so passionate. Me being a newer member, me and my fiance, we moved here because we love the people of Capitola, and we've always wanted to be in Capitola. And when we build new developments, right? I heard the lady's comment about sex offender and everything. New development doesn't automatically mean the worst of society. Some of it means some of the best. I live in one of those dense communities, and my neighbor, volunteers at Gray Bears every single day, every Thursday, distributing 500 bags of groceries. I'm a public servant. I work hard to create jobs and economic development with this entire county, and my wife works for the city, increasing, just the benefit. So these are some of the greatest people. I would say it's the best of our community, our teachers, our policemen, our people who want to contribute back. So I wouldn't automatically just say it's some of the worst people. But I think it represents some of the best people. People want to come here because Capitola represents, that kind of that fabric of the community. And I think that when we all live together, everyone thinks that with this development that we're doing, it doesn't automatically mean development's going to happen, but we are preparing for the future. We have to face that the demands of our community. We live in paradise practically here. So we have to account for the future. People who are want to like kind of protect. I understand where they're coming from because they worked hard, they sacrificed everything to be here. But at the same time, from an economic standpoint, if we don't have the people who can afford to live here, this community will eventually hollow out. The county provides a report for the state of the workforce, and the average income in this community, right, is about $120,000 for a family of two and two kids. And the median average salary here per capita is $44,000. People have to work almost 3 jobs to make it here, and they want to live here, right? So that's something in the consideration is like, we've lost 12,000 people in the last 3 years from our communities. If we continue doing that, like who's going to be left in the community, right, of this beautiful community that we serve?
I've lived in Capitola for a long time now, over 40 years, so I'm one of the old people who's been here for a long time. And I think Capitola is a very unique and lovely spot and place to be. And I think as a planning commission that we've talked a lot, we've had a number of meetings, and I think that we all agree that there is a need for more housing. That need is not going to go away. For me, it's going to be a balancing act. There are always going to be people who want us to, upzone every parcel in town. There are going to be people who don't want any parcel or any zoning changed. And I appreciate what the staff did. And, when we originally looked at the 37 properties, there were properties on there that were never going to be redeveloped, that were never going to change. And so I think we did need to come up with a criteria to sort of scale down the number of parcels we're looking at so we can come up with parcels that can reasonably be developed, have a reasonable expectation that they're going to be developed, and they will be higher density than some of the densities we've had in town before, but they're going to be in a way where they will fit into our community. We're talking about for properties that are going to have 30 units per acre to have a 50% lot coverage. So that means there is going to be landscaping, there is going to be open space, and I think we do have to provide parking. I know that's a contentious issue, but unfortunately we live in an area where there is really no viable public transportation at this time or in sort of the foreseeable future. So, and we have to look how these projects are going to impact the neighbors around them. We have a daylight plane ordinance in place to assure that, the new development is not going to create shadows over all of the homes like in Turner Lane. If that property gets redeveloped, there are going to be standards, there are going to be hearings. So for me, I think there is a place in the middle. I think we don't want to say, no, we don't want any new housing, because we do want new housing. But I think we have to be sensitive about where it's going to go, how dense it's going to be, and how it's going to work in our community. And in all honesty, I think we can achieve that. This Planning Commission has approved 2 recent new affordable housing projects. And one of them is on Capitola Avenue that's under construction right now. A lot of you probably drive by it. And I think when that project is going to be completed, it's going to be an asset to our community, just as the project on 38th Avenue that we approved, which I think was 52 units, is going to be an asset. We can't just stick our heads in the sand and say, no, we don't want anything. What we have to do is say, I guess the new term is maybe NIMBY, maybe YIMBY. What we want to do is new housing that's going to provide opportunity for our town and our residents. And tonight, we're just discussing it. We're starting to look at 7 sites that the staff has gone through a criteria with, which I actually think was a pretty good criteria. And they've come up with 7 sites that we're going to look at, and we're going to decide what standards and how they will be developed. But they will be sites that are going to provide some new housing opportunities if they get redeveloped, because a lot of Capitola is not going to get redeveloped. People talk about how expensive it is here, and personally, I don't think the price of housing is going to go down, except in the projects like the 2 we approved that are restricted for affordable housing. So tonight it's really about having a dialogue about our community. What do we want? What's going to work here? And, we're never going to make everybody happy, because some people will be unhappy because we've done too much. Some people will be unhappy because we didn't do enough. It's trying to find the balance that works for Capitola, which is a unique and wonderful place to live.
Okay, thank you.
I completely agree with Commissioner Westman. It finding the balance where, examining each context and each development, I feel like is key to either rezoning or having a developer come in and prescribe, higher density housing. And I feel like through all of these these workshops and these sessions where we, start to analyze how are we going to apply these things, we start to understand each individual context and how they're going to fit into, each part of our town. And I mean, at first it's scary, but I think in having these discussions, we really understand what direction we're all going to take and how it's going to fit in. So.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I would actually like to commend the staff and Ben for holding the workshop, putting all that information together. I'm a little confused as to why the notification didn't hit everybody in the room, but what the city has done is actually pretty unusual. Most of the communities don't have outreach sessions like that. They don't try to involve the public, and I appreciate all of the public impact response that we're getting from people, but via you folks being here, as well as letters and other means of communication. And I would agree with what's been said here. We all know that we need more housing. The question is, what's the balance? How do we get that? And what I'm really struggling with is how do we entice people to come here to actually redevelop some of the older properties we have, because as was pointed out by somebody, our housing stock is aging and it will have to get replaced. And so what ways can we get people to come in and do it in a fashion that fits into the character of Capitola, right? We're not going to build large 5-story, 6-story apartment buildings like you'll get in Silicon Valley or higher. And I think the objective standards that we have, as was pointed out by Ben earlier, are pretty good. And the people that showed up at the workshop made up some comments on them. Most of them were generally pretty positive. So, and as Commissioner Westman said, we're kind of like at a 50-50 point. We're trying to balance, too much density versus, impact to the community. And we obviously are struggling with that, and we'll continue to struggle with that over the course of the year. But we do need to make some actions here. Need to tell staff what we want them to do next. They've come back with the 7 sites and some recommendations. Any opinion? I'll let you guys talk first about your opinions and what next steps are.
I have one suggestion to try and move things along. When we had our meeting in 2024, there were some sites that we discussed at length and we had sort of already proposed that they might be, 30 units per acre. So it seems like we need to sort of go through the 7 sites one by one. And to be honest, I was going to save Park Avenue to the last because I think it's probably one of the more controversial sites that we're going to talk about. And, some of them I think that we could go through fairly quickly. And there's actually one site that we had proposed last time, the landing at Capitola at 40 units per acre. And in all honesty, I think that one probably should stay at that level because I think it has the potential of being the one that's closest to a lot of services around the Capitola Mall and, what little bus service we have is in that area. And so, I don't know how everybody else wants to do it, but do we want to go through them one by one or?
We do have slides if you'd like to go through them one by one.
Could we go to number, I'm just going by my page listening.
Before we do that, though, do we want to reopen any of the previous 37-ish that we looked at? I mean, there were some, I'm a little confused. There were some where the as-built is way above the standard. We have to do something with that.
Yeah.
Right?
So for the as-built, there's a number, I think it's 8 of the 37 that are non-conforming. An example of that is along Park Avenue, the very large. I think they're at about 32 dwelling units per acre. So rather than rezone them, we want to make an exception in the code that clearly states that existing non-conforming structures are legal non-conforming structures. So that way, the concern there was whether or not they could get funding in the future as non-conforming. And so that would bring them into compliance and not be a hurdle.
So you'd put in some language that says if it's being redeveloped, you can maintain your 32 use per acre or something like that.
I was the one who argued a lot for that last time about rezoning up to the density that we are, because often I think that properties that are non-conforming have difficulty getting financing to, and I think the proposal that staff's made is probably a better answer to solving that problem than what I was pushing for earlier.
Is that versus or the same from the staff's previous work that presented those different categories of the different densities from 10 all the way up to 40?
So previously, sorry, that was really loud. Previously, we were going to rezone. So in the example on Park Avenue of the really large buildings, we were going to rezone that to 40 to make it in compliance with code. Yeah, with what's there.
Now they will automatically be there.
Yeah, so this will bring them into compliance. They'll be legal, non-conforming, so there'll be no issue with the density, related to density.
Okay. Okay, let's go back to these 7, then we can talk about them.
Okay, how about we start with number 3, which is the one on Capitola Avenue, which is next to the Turner Lane Mobile Home Park. I think you can see on the slide up there, there's the site, and the people who live in the mobile home park are around that site. And seems like the existing density on that right now is 17 dwelling units per acre. And so it's one of the non-conforming sites. And when we had talked about it before, we had talked about, going up to 30 dwelling units per acre. But if we went to the 30 dwelling units per acre, I want to make certain that I understand this correctly. We would be talking about 3 stories, 35-foot height limit, and there's setback requirements in there. I'm not remembering exactly what they are, and they have to conform to the daylight plane ordinance, and there still has to be a significant amount of open space, which I believe we had said was at 50%. So I guess the question is, do we want to talk about that? We talked about 30 units before. Do we want to stay with that? Do we want to go down to, 20 units, which is higher than it's built out now? But, I think I can't just keep talking. We got to all talk about it.
I have just a quick question. And I'm sorry if this is redundant by any means at all, but if we were just to acknowledge the allowed density and just bring them into conformance, and I think we talked about this the last time we went through all of these sites. Will that provide any relief or any good intention? I would say just by sheer acknowledgement of nonconformance and not going into the 30. Into the higher numbers of density.
Well, I guess my take on this is we keep talking about having hit a goal. We haven't hit anything. We've added 10 ADUs in the last year. We've got 1,326 more units to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
we have those 1,326
we,
units.
we don't. We have nothing. Nothing's been developed.
No, right, but
we have it on a spreadsheet that theoretically somebody's going to come along with $1 gazillion and do all this development. But right now we have nothing.
Right.
So we need to entice people to come in and actually spend money to get the units that we all want for our kids that we don't have right now.
Right. But I think it is important. I mean, I think the Capitola Mall is one of the big projects that we talked about. And I think it's very clear that, that's a project that is not going, those developers are not going to come in and spend $40, $50 million, $60 million, whatever it takes in Capitola, unless they're comfortable that, Capitola is a solid community. It's a community where they can get their project approved. And, in having worked with developers, even the developer who did the original Capitola Mall, the community's got to be, I think, one that they consider to be together and not contentious. They want some security when they're going to come to the Planning Commission or they're going to come to the City Council. So I think we do have to take a pretty long-term view and say, let's do what's reasonable to do now, and the only thing that's going to entice a developer to come in is going to be numbers, and what kind of housing are they going to build? And the last thing that makes money for them is building low-income housing, and I think that, sites like this, a developer could look at and say, yes, we can redevelop this site because, the allowed density is, 15 dwelling units per acre. If we double that, that's going to be, an incentive for them to come in and do that.
That's my point. I think we need to up, all 7 of these, we were going to need to up the number. To get some interest.
Yeah.
And by the way, the mall is 63% of our requirement in terms of units. So we got a 37% problem here.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a heavy reliance on that project that hasn't happened yet. And just to be able to diversify our different housing stock out there and showing good faith as developers coming in, if we wanted to entice them, we have to show that the community is cohesive and that us as a city, as Capitola, we all are a unified front saying that, look, you want to come in here and do this? We're already doing it already. We're already setting the precedent for it.
And I think to assure our residents, we have to have firm objective standards that the buildings can only be 35 feet tall. that there will be a setback, that there will be a daylight plane, so that for the residents who live in Turner Lane, there's not going to be a building 3 stories right next to them where there's no sunlight. I mean, I think we have to do both. I think we can do that. I think there is a way for development to happen that's going to be good for our community, provide some more housing, and fit into our community. It's not just all or nothing on any of them.
Yeah, I would say that we all have to do that dance, right? Strike that balance for housing. But to do that, we have to have every single tool available to us. Like if we're in a sinking ship, we're not going to use a thimble to bail us out. We have to use a bucket, right? But that doesn't mean we use that bucket every single time. But it's nice to have that. We don't want to handcuff ourselves with the ability where if we have like a 40 density unit per acre in an area that strategically makes sense to bring things into non-compliant areas, into legal conformity, or near transit-oriented development, or near commercial or major corridors where it makes sense. We're not looking at putting 40 density units on 600 Park, where it doesn't make sense. We have to be very thoughtful about that, but we need to have all those tools.
Right, and I think we have to recognize that people talk about, well, I want all this housing so housing costs will go down and my children can buy a house here. And I'm probably a little skeptical of that because I think there are thousands of people who want to live in Capitola because of the climate and the beach and the ocean. And so we're going to need some affordable housing. And one of the ways that developers are going to do that is that if they provide 20% affordable housing in their projects, then there's some other, they can ask for height exceptions, density bonuses, a number of other things. And so, again, it's sort of a balancing act because we want them to build some affordable too. We don't want to just come up with zoning that's going to have, $1 million townhouses built on every site. So for 900 to 912 Capitola Avenue, we're somewhere between 20 and 30, I sense, and we probably need to decide which direction we think it should go.
Well, I would say we should, all of these 7, we should go for as high as we can just to see if that is an incentive.
So you're for 30.
Yep.
I'll agree with that.
Courtney?
I'm still thinking.
Sorry, I didn't.
I'm still running it around in my head.
So we have to be a little practical here. We have to provide staff with some recommendation as to what we want them to do. So let's just start with the basics. We're saying we're accepting the reduction other than the 8. So we really have 15 sites we're talking about that we're going to do something to, and we're not going to do something to the others because of condominium developments or other criteria that we have decided make those properties unlikely to be developed. Is that?
Yeah, so currently we're down to about, it's 7 areas, and there's multiple properties within some of them, so.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what we have.
Trying to do condominiums is, that's not going to be productive. And as staff said, it just creates a whole lot of anxiety where you're not going to entice a developer to come in for that. I know you want to, but that's not going to.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm a little bit worried. I think one of the requests is go back to legal and say, what can we accept from this process when we're doing the rezoning?
Yeah, we've been taking a certain approach to Program 1.6, and some questions have been raised about the sort of legality of that approach based on state law and what the housing element obligates the state to take. We're going to have sort of legal provide their opinion on that to confirm that we're sort of on the right ground. But I think it is productive on these 7 sites, or these 7 areas at least, to sort of get a sense of what you're feeling. And that will help us. And then when we come back to you, we'll have additional input from legal, and then we can also potentially spend a little bit more time looking at some of the other areas as well at that future meeting.
So within this site, I think I've heard from 2 planning commissioners that 30 would be appropriate.
I just want a point of clarification. If we say that caps it at 30 for the density units, right? But if we go at 40, then it can be, but not.
If you go to 40, then an application can come in for up to 40. 30 would cap it at 30. So, yeah.
But we also
But there-
know at 30, it may end up being more if there's density bonuses because there's affordable units in there.
But in all reality, they could come in with a 30 and not provide affordable.
Yes.
Well, let me clarify. They are required by law to provide 15% of the units. 1 out of every 7 has to be affordable.
1 out of every, okay. So I'm, as a point of clarification, I think I'm just wondering if we provided it to say, okay, we acknowledge that it's 17 dwelling units per acre, and an applicant comes in and says, I want to provide 40 dwelling units per acre with a higher percentage of affordable housing, and they're applying for a density bonus. They're fully allowed to do that, correct?
They are, yep.
So if we're providing, these really high density allowances within these neighborhoods, I'm trying to, if I had children and they were out looking for affordable housing, as we're, debating up here, and it's not affordable in essence, we're not really allowing for affordable, we're incentivizing affordable. I'm struggling with the principle of, pumping these numbers up to incentivize development that's not prescribed for, does that make sense?
I hear you, because I've thought about this too. Are we really better off saying, and I'm just on this site saying, the density ought to be 20 dwelling units per acre, because if we do that, if a developer wants to do 30 dwelling units per acre, then they're going to have to provide more affordable housing.
Exactly.
And, apply for all the density bonuses and laws that go there. And,
I don't know if I would agree, but why would we hamstring ourselves like that when we have, let's say even up to 40 right there? Why would we cut ourselves off at the knee?
Well, because what if somebody comes? I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm just saying, I don't understand why. I'm all for housing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we're all harping on this principle of providing more housing at an affordable rate. And I don't understand why incentivizing developers to come in and produce a large 3-story building in a neighborhood that, I'm hearing people do not want, why are we not at least incentivizing something that's among the purchase price of the people that we want to live there.
so it seems like on this one, we're sort of stuck, because the 2 of you sort of said that you want 30 units per acre, what you could live with.
Well, I think
I would revise mine to 40 if.
we're going to be stuck on all of them. There's a slight.
I'm just arguing. I'm not trying to say that.
I think we're equating density to a monstrosity, and I don't think that's the case. What I'm equating density to is enticing somebody to actually spend money to do something here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't maximize that, you're going to get nothing. I don't think if you put it at 20, anybody be interested, because the land is so expensive. Building is expensive. They need to have some sort of incentive to get a return on their investment.
I buy your argument, when you're talking about something like the Capitola Mall site.
That's a different animal.
That's a whole different animal. When you're talking about, a site like this, I think that and we're speculating on, housing prices, what interest rates are going to be in 5 years from now. I mean, we're guessing on all of this stuff. And, what I sort of hear Courtney saying is she's more in the 20 dwelling units per acre. And I think I could go more with the 20 dwelling units per acre, and you guys want higher numbers than that. So, maybe we should move on and talk about a couple of the other sites and see if they become a little clearer. Because tonight we are really just talking. We're not making a final decision about.
Yeah.
And I think it might be helpful as you're going through these sites to really think about transportation corridors. So as we go through these, maybe going through, there was a great comment tonight about us probably separating neighborhood compatibility and transportation as two different criteria. And it makes sense when you're thinking about more density, you want your density to be located on transportation corridors. So thinking about how those numbers work out. So for this one, we can move on. We hear that there's somewhere like either 20 or 30, and we'll come back with the reasoning behind our recommendation.
You could,
Unless you'd like to discuss it further.
well, you can shoot me if you want, but is it feasible to do one or some of these properties and just look at different densities from a conceptual standpoint and what the impact would be? What it looks like? I think we sort of did that on one other project. Maybe we spent our budget just doing that. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. We don't have any
Okay.
budget for that right now, but we did do that within our housing element.
Okay.
I could look into it.
Yeah, that's fine. If we don't have, we already, okay, that's fine. Let's move on to something else. Let's pick another one just to talk about it.
If you want to go to one where I could go on a pretty high density, we could go to number 9, which is landings at Capitola.
Number 7?
Number 7.
Different list, but the landings at Capitola. To me, this is a perfect site for, redeveloping, partly because it is on a transportation corridor. It's reasonably close to the Capitola Mall. It's, hopefully we're going to have other amenities. There's drugstores, there's grocery stores, there's those kinds of things that are, walkable. It's got streets on 2 sides of it.
I agree.
Yeah, that makes.
For this one, I could go with 40 dwelling units per acre.
Agree.
Yeah, I would say so. I like the recommendation of transportation corridors, emphasis on the.
Okay, we got one done.
Yeah. Sorry for arguing.
Always good to hear the other side.
Okay, the next one is Capitola Gardens, area 6. So this is located on Capitola Road.
This one,
It's currently allowed 10 dwelling units per acre. The built density is at 12. We were suggesting back in 2024 that this go to 30 dwelling units per acre. There's quite a bit of open space on the parcel, and there's single story. So there's quite a bit of room for, and with the layout, a phased redevelopment could occur on this site. The transportation corridor is not as busy. Capitola Road does not have that many buses at this time. So I think that's why we landed on 30 there. But.
Is there
your comment about phased development also is interesting, and it'll come up with park, but can we mandate that they do it in phases so there's less disruption to the existing tenants? You know what I mean?
I think it would be practical for them to do it in phase so that they're, but whether or not we can mandate, I'm not sure.
Okay.
This one would seem like it would be the, I know this, walking through the grounds, it's lots of open space. I could see them phasing this one pretty easily.
So with that being a transportation corridor that's not highly activated, is that something that would be easy to do as we're talking about providing infrastructure and amenities over time from there?
So it's really outside of our realm of for public transit. That's Metro that provides that. So as the demand increases and more ridership, then we would get more transportation from Metro, but it's not within our, we can't require it. We can require improvements be made. So if Metro is interested in a bus stop or something like that, or, we could ask the developer to do that. But the frontage is actually the location of the current 36-unit affordable housing development on Capitola Road. So there really isn't the opportunity to ask for a bus stop along this location. But you can ask for those types of improvements from the property owner.
Okay.
Right, so the housing project we approved on Capitola Avenue abuts this, correct?
Correct.
And it's 35 DU.
36
6.
dwelling units total.
I would support the 30.
Oh, 30 for this is what we were suggesting, 30 dwelling units.
Would you support the 30?
Go with 35.
Go with 35 too to make it equal to the neighbor.
Yeah, but the neighbor wasn't able to provide parking, which was, I think, the big issue for the neighborhood around it. And while we all want to say we want to get rid of our cars, I think we're going to, we've got to be realistic about what we have and what we don't have in neighborhoods.
So the Bluffs is the development in front of this, and there's 36 units total. I think that site is over an acre, so I'm unsure exactly what the density of that development was. Right. If Brian has the answer, that would be helpful.
So why don't we leave it 30 to 35 and
yeah,
if Brian
30 to
can
35.
answer it now, that's great. If not, we can
Move on.
we'll be here all night.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Brian Freilich with staff. So that project had 36 units and 0.81 acres. So it was just under 30 per acre.
So if we went with 30, then they would be compatible with each other. Okay.
Okay, what's next on our list there? Whoever's got control. Ben, is that you? Okay.
This is Capitola Cove. It's along Wharf Road. I think these are older apartments that are in need of redevelopment, and that's one of the reasons.
And these are not, there's not much in terms of single-family housing around these.
There is.
There's some on the southern side,
Yeah.
western side.
Grace, that whole area is a lot of single.
Across Grace.
Yeah.
Those are
Those are single.
multi-story apartments, right?
There's, next
Great.
door is a medical facility, the assistant, right?
Yeah, along the southern borders, it's a variety of low-density multifamily and single-family, but the rest of it are other uses like apartments and like you mentioned, the old medical facility.
To the north.
So 30 is not unrealistic. Could even go higher.
30.
One of these days, I'm going to get higher.
Well, you got one higher.
That was already set up for you.
Yeah, I agree.
This is along Wharf and then Clare Street to the north. So these are two-story apartments. Again, older product apartments. And also could, a phased development could occur here because of the spacing between. But we were originally suggesting 30 dwelling units per acre on this site.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's as high as 19. It doesn't look like that when you drive by it, at least.
This is one I might actually go a little higher.
Yeah, I mean, thank you.
It's
Uh, And my reasoning for that is that, it abuts the library there. The Risman Mansion Park is going to be across the street from it. It's next to, sort of a medical facility. There's really, and I think across the street from it is another sort of large condominium complex. And so, we're not talking about an area that's really going to have a major impact on single-family residents. So, this is one for me. I could, if we talked about 40, that would sort of work on this particular site.
I'll agree with that one.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
So we talked about go ahead.
Go ahead.
We talked about Area 3, and it was kind of a mix between 20 and 30. And so now we'll go to Area 2, Rosedale Hill. These are apartments, 2-story, similar to the last development that you saw, although not on a it's not on a major road is the difference here. It's really set within a residential neighborhood. So the existing built density is 21 dwelling units per acre. The allowed is 15. We were suggesting 30 dwelling units per acre.
Yeah, see, this one I don't think be any more than 30.
No, I agree. It's plunked in the middle of a single family. They're really kind of out of sorts.
What's up?
But a good architect could make them look really nice.
Yeah, Paul.
Just the location.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then next we'll go to 600 Park. So 600 Park is currently, the density there is 12 dwelling units per acre. It's zoned low multifamily, which is 10 dwelling units per acre. Staff back in 2024 was suggesting 40 dwelling units per acre. And the reasoning for that was because, again, phased development could occur on this site because of the makeup of structures, also single-story buildings. A lot of the rooftops you're seeing there also are carports. So when you're seeing the structures, that's not all apartments. And then because it's located on Park Avenue, which right now there is not a bus going along Park Avenue, but there has been a bus there in the past, but there's definitely, in terms of transportation corridor, it's lacking in terms of a current bus. So
This is the one where we actually did some rendering of designs, right? And because of the nature of the sort of the valley that it's in, it's not doesn't feel like it impacts the residential area around it, and near the school, as much as other locations.
yeah, so back in like 2008, Mid-Penn came in. I want to say 2008, that might not be the correct date, but Mid-Penn actually was hired by the city to look at this site and provide us information on additional density on that site. And they suggested a phased development approach. There's 80 existing units on this site. I think within that redevelopment approach, they got up to a little over 100, so it wasn't a really drastic change in the number of units. So at 6.8 acres, that's almost, 280 if you were at 40, or 210 if you go 30 dwelling units per acre.
These are, I'm trying to, I've driven through here, but they're 2-story generally, right?
One story. This site we looked at for our housing element, whether or not to include it. It's been in the last 2 cycles of our housing element, and it was also in our affordable housing overlay. And it recently sold last summer. So there's a new owner. But when we were looking at it for the purposes of our housing element, our consultant, Veronica Tam, at the time said that because of the cash flow that's existing on this site and the amount of money that it was recently purchased for, that developer would have to probably at least quadruple the density in order to have a return on investment because the land value.
So for me, it's too bad we can't, we can't come up with things for individual sites, which, sort of makes it hard. Because if, you could say to me, well, this property abuts residential on two sides, so we're going to increase the setback on
That's what I
those
was
two
just
sides. So, the development's forced to go in the middle and wouldn't have such an impact on the neighborhood. I think that would be great, but we can't do that on individual properties. We have to have objective standards that, apply to all of them. And so since we can't do that, I'm probably leaning more to 30 dwelling units an acre, because it will have you can't just say it's not going to have an impact on those two residential neighborhoods that are on two sides of it, which are, almost all single-family homes.
They're definitely all single-family homes, and Wesley would probably be the most affected if we're going 3 stories. I don't disagree with you on that, but it is in a bit of a valley relative to both Wesley and the school and the street, Washburn. So it doesn't, the impacts on the sun and things like that will be pretty limited. It's just you might see a 2-story thing instead of 3 stories if you're on Wesley, in my opinion.
I would say in most circumstances, I tend to lean a little bit more higher density on that, but this is the one situation where I think it would make sense to go to 30, just because looking at that current location of it, and also the fact that staff was saying that there's no transportation set up to be able to support that kind of density, I think it would make sense to have it at 30.
Yeah, the transportation on Park is a bit of a problem, and we don't know what the RTC is going to do.
I could
So
go
30
with
is okay with me. Okay.
Yeah.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, what other recommendations do we have for staff?
I think that was what we were looking for. We're going to check back in with our legal staff and come back with more information on where we're headed at the next meeting. At this point, the next meeting, if we wanted the noticing requirement for these work sessions, we have not been sending out the green cards. We didn't want to, for the work session, once we go to we'll have a draft ordinance, then you send out the green cards. We've been putting notices up on the site so the residents are aware, and we've also reached out to all property owners of the the multiple property owners. But we just didn't want to create the same havoc that we created last time now that we've cut it back to 7. That being said, if you'd like, we are happy to do the green cards, or we could bring back the next work session item and make sure wherever there was an entrance, we placed a big, large sign, the green sign saying.
I think it would be worthwhile to send out the green cards. I think this is a significant change, and there will always be somebody who comes and says, I didn't get a notice for whatever reason. We all do that and know that. But since we're going to have, one more session here to talk about this, it's going to be discussion. We're going to have some more information from our attorney. We're going to have that. I think it's important to at least send out the green card so people in the community know that this is happening. I think communicating with our community is one of our most important jobs, and we haven't been doing a very good job at that lately, it seems to me. So I would go above and beyond and send out the cards.
I agree but disagree a little bit. I think we've done more in community outreach in the last year than has been done before that. And I agree, we should, for whatever the $300 for the green cards, we should send them out.
I agree. Communication and transparency is so important when it comes to us being up here, and always err kind of on the side of conservative and just getting it out there wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, and I'll be clear that the green card, so there's different standards for when there's rezoning versus development standards. So the green cards will make sure for anything being proposed for rezoning are sent out. Okay. Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
We have an actual application on our agenda.
I was going to say. Okay, I think we can now move on to item B, which is 309 Capitola Avenue. This conditional use permit for sign and wine tasting room, and I presume staff presentation on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. If you could just bear with me a moment while I get settled in here, I have a presentation for you. Okay, ready to go. So 309 Capitola Avenue, this is an existing mixed-use village zone property. This is actually just up the street at the intersection of California Avenue and Capitola Avenue. The proposal this evening is to occupy the space and establish a wine tasting room and a wine retail sales business. Got an aerial photo here. So the existing building is an L shape, and there are two parking spaces in the void of the L up by Capitola Avenue that you can see in the aerial photo there. A little bit of background. So I mentioned the zoning is mixed-use village. This building in particular has been vacant for about a year, maybe a little bit longer. Past tenant mix has been retail, various personal services, and there was a coin-operated laundry business dating back to the 1990s that we found. All alcohol uses, whether they're sales or service, oriented consummation on site in any type, they all require a use permit. And then all sign permits in the village also require Planning Commission approval. Just a little bit on the space. It's a little under 1,100 square feet. The building is 751. And I've got a floor plan that'll show that the customer area is minimized to 120 square feet, and that's to categorize this as a takeout type of business. And then 634 square feet are spread between storage, restroom, and circulation. And there's a max occupancy of 35 occupants. So proposed tasting room and retail, the general business plan is subscription. So folks with a wine subscription could pick up and taste, and then also individual bottle retail. The recommended conditions in the staff report are all fairly standard. There was no need for any specific conditions. The type of license through ABC that's being pursued is a type 02, which is a little bit uncommon. This is a duplicate license associated with a wine manufacturer. So this allows them to have, aside from either the vineyard itself or the processing area for making the wine, they can have a retail outlet that is on a different location. And so that's what is being proposed here. The home location is actually in the west side of Santa Cruz. Interior renovations discussed with the applicant only involve loose furniture, a modular bar installation, and rack storage. So thus far, no building permits are foreseen. And I mentioned the business model, so I won't repeat that. Here's the just the front of the building. So it's got a brick veneer that kind of borders each section of the building, and a flat roof that is actually dressed up with a mansard architecture. And so what we're looking at here is the front door. And this is a floor plan showing where the bar would be in purple, and then the limited customer space of 120 square feet, and break room, storage area, circulation, and a bathroom. And then looking at the sign permit, this is just a solid piece of wood that would be routed, stained, and painted with the logo and the business name, and mounted to the brick veneer to the right of the front door. And it is well under the max allowed size and no illumination. I've just got the conditional use permit findings here. So these were all written out in the staff report, and we were able to make affirmative findings on all 5 of these, but they're here in case we want to get into them in the discussion. And that wraps up my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions. I do believe the applicant is here and would like to make a brief intro.
Okay, any questions for staff first? Okay, if the applicant wants to step up, I'd be happy to hear you.
Good evening, I'm Joe Miller, and my partner is Sam Miller, and we are related. He's my son. What we're here tonight to do is propose the establishment of a wine tasting room, not a bar, not a place where people come to sit and drink. We pour like 1 ounce samples of 4 wines, maybe 5, and our goal is, as a result of those tastings, to sell wine. We have our winery on the west side of Santa Cruz, and it's essentially our main outlet for our wines. We really enjoy hand selling, meeting our customers, and they become very loyal. They come from as far away regularly from San Francisco, the whole Bay Area. We even have some customers come from Modesto and Fresno. So we have a wide net, and what we are seeking here is a location that will expose us to more people. We've been looking literally for years for a good site for a tasting room, and we think 309 Capitola has hit the jackpot. I mean, it's perfect for its location. It's enough room for us, and we expect that we will grow our wine club and our sales. And furthermore, we expect we will bring, assuming you're interested in that, more people to Capitola because our customers come back. The most frequent question we get is, where's a good place to eat here? And in fact, our customers that come, especially from a distance, always make a day of it. And so we look forward to becoming a part of the Capitola community. We will be representing local wines. Almost all our wines come from grapes within 50 miles of here. And we are located in an area of very high quality grape production, and it is our goal to make the best possible wines. And I think I got less than 3 minutes in.
Good, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
No, I'd like to say I think it's a great idea. I have been in Capitola, as I said earlier, a long, long time. So I would suggest in the wintertime you keep a few sandbags, because even going back to when it was a dry cleaner, that's always the first building to get water in it.
Well, in fact, it's in our lease that we have to have sandbags in case there's flooding.
But good luck to you, and welcome to Capitola.
Thank you for opening a wine bar in Capitola.
We're really excited.
We have to go through the motions first.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Would you like?
Oh, I was just going to quickly say welcome to the community. We're very happy to have you on that site.
Thank you very much.
I was almost tempted not to approve it, seeing you went to UCLA, but we're very happy that you're in the community on there. We look forward to being members.
Point understood.
Yeah.
Well, we both went there. So thank you very much. And we really look forward to this. And we think in the end, you'll be happy that we're here.
Okay, thank you. Does somebody want to make a motion on this?
Have we opened the public hearing?
Oh, sorry, you're right. Any comments from the public? You're right. Hearing none, now we'll bring it back. I think we deliberated on this, so
Can I
anybody
ask
want
a
to make a
quick
motion?
question just before we make a motion? I'll make a motion, but I just wanted to ask a quick question. The 120 square feet in the front, is that something we're holding them to, or is that something that they're proposing?
It's what they're proposing. The code would allow 160, which is what the condition says. So if
Yeah.
they wanted to rearrange in a minor way, they do have a little bit of flexibility to go up to 160.
Okay, and we're still holding on to the whole 6 seats in a tenant space, right? No, that's not a thing anymore. Okay.
It's not seats, it's square footage of
Square foot, yeah.
customer.
Sorry. Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Anybody second?
I'll go and I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a vote call.
Commissioner Q,
Aye.
Commissioner Westman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Christensen,
Aye.
Chair Esty.
Aye. Okay, congratulations. You're welcome. And the last formal item is director's report.
Okay. Well, last month I updated you that the southbound opening would probably happen in February. We're now on to March, and we're still hearing it should open any day. So it was the repainting is the last step, and once the repainting is done, it should open. So we're crossing our fingers for March. And then I wanted to let you know that the Coastal Commission has reviewed our zoning code updates, and right now we're anticipating a hearing for those to get certified for our LCP at their May meeting. And we've been working on the wharf, long-term plan for the wharf. So at our meeting next week at City Council on the 13th, we're going to bring forth 5 or 6 concepts that asking the City Council to tell us to move forward with our public outreach. So we'll have a robust public outreach process in the months of March and April. So we're just asking for their blessing to move forward with that. So the concepts will be published this Friday at the City Council meeting. We just want to make sure there's no major errors that they don't want us to move forward with before we go out. And we'll be actually bringing that to Planning Commission. We'll be approaching all of the different boards and committees within the city of Capitola, as well as going out to the Chamber of Commerce and the Capitola Wharf Enhancement Group, as well as CWEP, and getting feedback on those 6 concepts, as well as a public survey, and then 2 community engagement meetings. And one other thing is that next week at City Council, they'll be reviewing an annexation application for 1610 Bulb Avenue. And we looked at this previously with an assisted living development. They are now moving forward with no development attached to the annexation request. So the City Council will just be looking at it on the merits of combining 2 lots and what are the pros and cons of that before they make a decision of whether or not to allow that annexation. And on the 27th at City Council, we'll be bringing forth, this is something from our housing element, we're moving forward with a new housing rehab program, and I'm really excited about this program. Habitat for Humanity is interested in partnering with us and carrying out the rehab program. And it's really looking at how we can protect our existing affordable housing stock and utilizing existing deed restricted single-family and multifamily homes in providing, I think the budget was $12,500 per unit, but utilizing an organization that's a nonprofit like Habitat for Humanity. The dollars go further because they're volunteers. So they're talking about on some of the properties actually doing a full repainting of the exterior of homes, looking at replacing roofs. So it's really an exciting program. So
can this program be used for mobile homes, manufactured homes, as well as regular built homes?
So we're first programming this. Last time we did a rehab program. We did it just for mobile homes that were affordable, or mobile homes for people that qualified. And so this time we're going to go to try to do some work on the single family and multifamily deed restricted. I will say in the city of Capitola, there's only 17 units, and So I think we'll open it up to others after we make sure. We'll send letters to all 17 and see if they're interested. And it's grant money, so it's not a loan that has to be paid back. Yeah, so that's exciting. And then I had mentioned that RTC is having a town hall tomorrow night from 6 to 7:30 at New Brighton Middle School. So with that, that concludes my updates for this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. With no other business, we can adjourn to the next meeting, which will be April 3rd at 6 o'clock. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.